Why is, you were talking about the venous flow and how swimming is very good for venous flow as opposed to weightlifting where you momentarily don't allow the circulation in the muscle. Why is the venous flow an important point?
Well, the venous flow is interesting because, first of all, if you look at the ratio of how much blood there is in your arterial system compared to your venous system, your arterial system is the blood that leaves your heart and goes to provide oxygenation and removing carbon dioxide from the tissues, muscles, organs, and so forth. But it's under high pressure. And that pressure is maintained by the tonicity of the small vessels.
Got it.
And in terms of the percentage of blood that's in the arterial system at any one time compared to the venous, it's about 5 to 1. 5 times more blood in the venous system.
Oh, wow.
And the other big difference is that the venous system doesn't have a pump to pump that blood around. The only thing it's got is outside compression in terms of the legs by muscles when they contract, and then valves in all the veins as they carry the blood back to the heart. So if you are standing and you're absolutely dead still, the venous pressure tends to rise because the blood is wanting to go dependent. The only thing that's preventing it from doing that are the valves in the veins.
Oh.
And you will find, if people watch these military parades where guys have to stand very upright and very quiet for a while, that they suddenly faint. And the reason that they faint is that they have not got enough blood in the arterial system in order to produce a circulation that delivers the oxygen that they need. And you'll see them, it's a rather odd thing to see because they literally look as if they've been shot. They don't slowly sit down, they're not feeling too good. They literally just curve and collapse in a heap. And the solution is very easy. You just lie them down and lift their legs up slightly, and then they recover very quickly and feel very foolish. And there are different things you can do to teach people how to cope with that. But that's going to happen more likely to a young person because they've got such a fluid and very active control system, and it overplays at times and underplays at times.
Got it.
Usually right before the Queen walks out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or is it the armistice service, the remembrance service? Always happens.
Yeah.
All these young kids all just drop down.
And it's also because they're quite tense as well. But going back into the swimming side of it, you know, the idea that people were dying quite significantly in the first leg of the ultra triathlon, which is the swimming leg. And they couldn't understand why these extremely fit guys who've got a tremendously difficult level to reach in order to be accepted for a race like that are drowning in the first event in the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And obviously as the physiology became evident, in other words, it was the pooling of blood in the lungs rather than being able to get around the body fast enough, that elucidated that. But and you know how they prevent it? The way they prevent it is they used to send these guys all off together. So there were 3,000 swimmers going at the same time with their wetsuits and kicking like mad to get in front. And then they had to get to a buoy and then turn. And that buoy became like a funnel, and it was a big Barney out there. And the way they've solved it, and it's made a huge difference, is that they send them off every 20 seconds. So they have a group of, say, 15, 20 people. They go and they wait, and then have to wait 20 to 30 seconds, depending on the race. And then the next wave goes. And the way that in time and know where you've come at the end of this event is that everybody gets an electronic marker when they get out the water, when they get onto their bike, and when they get onto the run. So that's the physiology of it, which I thought was fascinating. But it took a long time to work out why a lot of these young, super fit people died of drowning, which of course it is internal drowning. It wasn't a swimming misfortune. Very interesting.
And so how does the regularity and the rhythm of the arm stroke and the legs going up and down, how does that improve or balance this impact between the arterial flow and venous flow?
Well, the kicking, especially, most of this training is done in the orthostatic position. By that I mean sitting on a bike or standing up. They all, if you talk to them frankly, they all say the worst of this damn triathlon is the swim, because they are not that good swimmers, but they're bloody good bikers and runners. And if you divide the time that you do everything in an ordinary tri or in the ultra tri, the least amount of time is spent in the swim, and the bike and the runner getting close by. And the reason for that is it attracts more people if they're good runners and cyclists, but it doesn't attract many people that are very good swimmers, because they're usually very good swimmers are not good runners or cyclists.
Sport was created by cyclists, that's why.
Yeah.
And then the other big thing is that when they jump in the water and they kick like hell, that suddenly, from standing up before going and then lying in the supine position when you swim, increases the venous return tremendously. It just pours back to the heart, and the heart can't quite cope with that volume. And therefore there is a degree of pooling in the pulmonary circulation. And that's quite a complicated thing, but you can see it if you see the diagram as to how that works. And the arms, I don't think, have much effect, simply because there's not a tremendous amount of blood in your arms when you are swimming, or if you're doing things, because the volume of arms are not that much compared to the body and the legs.
Yeah, but then when you're swimming, you're in a horizontal position. So doesn't the relative amount of blood in the arms increase slightly, at least?
No, because at one stage they're below your heart.
Okay.
In other words, you're in the water, they're below your heart, and they come out only in your recovery phase. In the recovery phase, divide the cycle into 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 and 4 are the recovery phase. And if you look at a person's arm in a recovery phase, if he's a good swimmer, it's completely limp, like a noodle, completely loose. And the guys that are stiff with their arms, they go to get tired quickly.
Got it. And then I had one more question, if I may. And then that's about the cold water training, where you're preventing from being cooled down. And if I understood you, someone like Lewis Pugh, yourself, Sally, Ned, you're basically either naturally, and maybe in Lewis's Pugh, consciously shunting the blood from the skin, correct?
Away from the skin.
Away from the skin. Therefore, keeping the core warm. Is there anything that a swimmer can consciously do to facilitate that?
Yes, train regularly in cold water is the best. It's a natural thing. I don't think it's possible to, I know the yoga people or the yogis say they can slow their heart rate up or down at will. I am dubious about that. I think they can influence it, but I don't think they can say, all right, I'm going to have a heart rate of 40 and then I'll change it to 100. I don't believe that. But that's autonomic. Autonomic means you can't control it.
Yeah.
And the diversion of blood that occurs when you get cold is to prevent you from losing the heat.
Got it.
And that's interesting, because if you look at a game of squash where the guys are really working hard in a hot environment, where are they red? Their arms and their faces. And the reason why they're red is because they need to lose heat. They are in the other side of the extreme. They're generating so much heat by all the effort that they've got to lose a lot of heat, and their body chooses to lose heat from where the heat is capable to be lost. You can't lose heat from where your body's covered by clothing. So their arms and their faces and their legs get bright red. And in swimming, it's the other way around. You're trying to conserve heat.
I have an observation, Otto, I'd be interested in your opinion on. Before a cold swim, I see people walking around barefoot in their togs, and then there's a delay on the start. And when they get in the water, they're completely useless because they're frozen somehow.
Yeah.
Then I see some people who will stand in the water for a moment and put cold water on their skin, which I think probably facilitates the shutting of the blood supply down.
Yeah.
And then I see other people like me that keep the hat and the coat and the stuff on until the last minute and just go in. but the ones that I'm particularly interested in, the ones who are standing around for too long barefoot, who somehow have gone past shutting the blood supply and are now just freaking cold.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. And I think the answer is, as I mentioned, the water you're getting into has got a huge volume and you're a small volume. You've got a certain amount of heat and you've got to conserve that for as much and long as possible. And therefore, I would normally keep well clad. I wouldn't go out and expose myself and then get into cold water and then get out again and then do the event. And the reason for that is simply to try and get your autonomic nervous system to react when you are at the early stage rather than at the late stage. And that you'll do by repetitive training. And it's quite complicated, but you know the Pavlov story of ring a bell and feed a dog. You do that enough times, if you just ring the bell, the dog will salivate. And the same applies if you make a person cold regularly, they will start to shut down earlier and earlier and earlier, in other words. And I had the experience a number of times. We used to have a swim from Simonstown, which is on the other side of the peninsula, to Muizenberg. And that's in False Bay. And False Bay is renowned, or is supposed to be renowned, for having a bit more sharks than on the Table Bay side. And that's changed, by the way. There's a group of orcas there at the moment, and they've been eating some sharks. One thing only, they go for the shark's liver. That I'm diversing. The point being is that I was often at one of these organized swimmers, and you mill around a table and you give your name and you get a number written on your arm, and then you meet your friends, and I would shake the hands of various friends, and they said, "Gee, you got in the water already?" I said, "No, I haven't been anywhere near it." And I was shut down already. My hands were completely cold because I had shut down the peripheral circulation. Yeah. And that was part of the workup that I believe is how Lewis's training benefited him by making himself cold on a regular basis. And the same applies to the theory or the idea that I have about swimming in the Sea Point pool. You start off warm, and by the time halfway, in other words, this period that we're in now, you are cold adapted and you're in a perfect position to go and swim in the Northern Hemisphere, where the water is obviously slightly warmer, but it's the right way around. You start when the water you're swimming in is reasonable, and then it slowly gets cold. And it's a very slow thing. I mean, it's like 1 week it'll be 15, and the next week it'll be 14, and then sometimes it goes up to 14.5. But it's a slow, gradual fall of the temperature, and that makes the training tough because I hate the cold water, but it's easier to cope with if you do it regularly enough.
Yeah, last time I met you in Cape Town, Otto, you were crap in the ocean, but you were really good over lunch.
Nothing wrong with that.
One of